Mr. Owen, and it is a pleasure to follow my neighbour, the Honourable Member for South West Devon. I believe I was just 13 years old, still probably causing as much nuisance then as I do now when he was first elected. And it seems that some of the issues that affected our region have remained very similar from the 90s and 80s as it does today. It's still the lack of investment in our strategic infrastructure. And the member is absolutely right to signal road and rail as some of those areas where we need investment. It's also about our skills and our investment in our education, delivering the benefits for all our young people right across the region so they can stay in our region and create the jobs and future prosperity that I think we can all have. Very similar to my neighbour, I want to make the distinction between the southwest and the far southwest. So when I talk about the far southwest, I talk about Devon and Cornwall, because there is sometimes a temptation by ministers to lump improvements in Swindon and Bournemouth as part of the overall benefit to the southwest. And I think we need to break down that larger region so we can have a greater focus on where some of those benefits is best felt, and in particular around the peninsula, Devon and Cornwall, and further up in Somerset and Dorset as well. I think as a region, we have a lot to be proud of. We are a region of immense beauty, immense skill and talent, real professionalism, real huge potential for job creation. But sometimes as a region, we don't do enough to talk about how good we are. Certainly this is true for Plymouth, but I realise it can be true of our wider region. We hide our light under a bushel, and then we hide the bushel. We're not always as good at talking ourselves up as we need to be. And if we are to get our fair share from government, we need to be bolder about our ambition, we need to be clearer and more relentless about where we need help, and we need to be more proud about the areas where we do so much and excel at the moment. The unfairness is one of the reasons why I first thought about going into politics in the first place, because as a young lad growing up in Devon, I saw other parts of the country getting stuff that we weren't getting. I saw my friends in other parts of the country having seemingly to have more opportunities than was being afforded to young people in the southwest, and that doesn't seem fair. Because whether you live in Devon, in Plymouth, in Cornwall, or anywhere else around the country, you should have the same opportunities. And sometimes our peripherality does seem to restrict our opportunities in that respect. And that is something that we need a structural, long-term, cross-party plan to really engage with. And that is something that I hope this debate here can really help put pressure on ministers to go and get, because actually we need to have a turning point for our region. I'm very mindful of the fact that as the only Labour backbencher here, I feel like I'm up against a very tough job interview with my region's Tory colleagues opposite me. It's whether I'd like the job at the end of it, the employees. But I know that the other Labour MPs for the region, my colleagues in Bristol and in Stroud, would echo this. Sadly, they seem to have timed, the whips have timed SI committees very well to avoid their presence here. But actually that fairness and that cross-party working that we need to have if we are to succeed as a region is something that is very important, and they would like me to pass on the benefits that come from working together in order to do that. Because we know as a region we've been starved of investment for far too long. We know as a region that our per head education spend, our health spend, our transport spend is well below the national average. We know that those have been structural problems that have affected our regions not just since 2010, but for decades and decades before that. And we know that we need to change that. And I'm minded of the fact that as the entire government's majority is sitting opposite me in this bit here, that actually we have a power and we have a voice that we should be using more of. Because I think the sooner our region starts standing together, cross-party, louder and determined about our key asks, the more likely it is that ministers will be listening to us in the far southwest. Because it's not only the DUP and their 10 members of parliament that should be hold sway here. The DUP had about 300,000 votes at the last general election. There are 260,000 people that live in Plymouth. And I think we need to start evening out that influence that we have as a region, because there are still some problems that we need to address. But there are also some opportunities. And I want to briefly just dwell on those opportunities in particular. My old friend from South West Devon spoke about Dawlish. I honestly wonder what could have gone through ministers in the Department for Transport, knowing that the 5th anniversary of Dawlish being washed away was today, to decide to park the announcement on funding 2 weeks hence. I can't understand why that has happened. But equally, at the end of the funding, which I anticipate will be coming in a couple of weeks' time, because if it's not, I really do hope there's an almighty stink about it, we'll only have a train line at Dawlish that closes slightly less than it does at the moment. It doesn't deal with the structural inequality and slowness of our service, doesn't deal with the capacity of it. And that is somewhere where I'd recommend to the Minister and to all colleagues that haven't praised themselves of it recently, the superb Peninsula Rail Task Force report that talked about our long-term investment from Penzance at one end of the region to Paddington, destination at others, £8 billion of investment over 20 years that could transform our economy. Because an average journey time of 3 hours 30 from Plymouth to London, just imagine the transformation if that could be delivered to 2 hours 15, as the PRTF suggests. Imagine the job creation potential. Imagine the greater investment, the more tourism, the greater connectivity, the broader horizons for our young people that could create. And I say to the Minister, I realise it's not his department, but any nudges and winks you can give to colleagues in the DFT to push out the announcement we know is sitting on their press office, waiting to be announced in a couple of weeks' time, would be greatly appreciated. It's not just the rail that we need to make sure. We need to extend the M5 from Exeter to the Tamar Bridge as well. And we also need to be bold in some of our vision. There's one final thing, Mr. Owen, that I just want to talk about, and that is the huge potential that our natural environment presents to the region and our economy. I want to see Plymouth Sound designated as the UK's first national marine park. It's a project that has the support of the Peninsula Plymouth Marine Laboratories, Plymouth University, the Marine Biological Association, so many of those genuinely world-class institutions that just happen to be based in Plymouth. I think being able to protect and value our coastal waters is something that is incredibly powerful. And I know that there are people on both sides of the House that recognise the importance of protecting our coastal waters, to valuing them more. And I think having the UK's first national marine park in Plymouth Sound could send a strong message, not only that Plymouth is open for business for those marine science, marine engineering jobs, to fishing, but also to marine conservation as well, but that our wider region is open to the job creation, the potential that could flow from a greater investment in our marine sector, both in terms of science, but also the really exciting elements about marine autonomy, keeping the jobs in our Royal Navy in the city, keeping our jobs in the marine refits that accompany it. It is an incredibly exciting project, Mr. Owen, and I hope that members on that side of the House will be joining the increasingly large numbers of individuals on a cross-party basis getting behind this campaign, because if it works for Plymouth Sound, it could work for coastal waters right around our peninsula and indeed right around our country, and I think it could be really quite exciting. Thanks very much.